We good? Cool. So welcome back after lunch to the final session of this 2-day workshop. What we're going to do now is think about a way where we can come up with a workflow that is more reproducible than just having a bunch of scripts and kind of in my head remembering the order that I have to run them, right? Because if I start a big project and I need to run, say, sorry, yeah? Before we start.
Yesterday, you told us how to clean and make more tidy the bash script. How can we do this?
How do we make a tidier bash script?
I mean, to clean all the stuff that is to clean the command.
Clear or control?
Are you want to clear your terminal?
Yeah.
Clear. Just write clear. So if you write clear, things go away. All right. So we want to think about a way where if we have a bunch of scripts we have to run, potentially on multiple data sets or on multiple simulations, I want to come up with a way where I don't have to always remember the order I have to run things. I want the computer to somehow manage that for me in some way. So if I just write one word or 2 words, the computer then figures out what scripts need to be run, i.e. if you've updated certain data sets, certain things need to come from them, but other stuff can remain the same. So if I change the way I want to draw my figures, I don't first have to run my simulation again that takes 35 hours. It just does the figure. So that's the kind of workflow I want to get to. And to do that, we're going to use a program called Make, which is going to help us do that. So to make sure this is going to work for everybody, 3 things need to happen. So the first thing is if you go to our Etherpad, on line 251, there's a link where there's data that I need you guys to get, and it's a zip file. So I want you to download that somewhere where you feel comfortable. That's number 1. So when that works, and you've got it downloaded, a green sticky, and ideally, so we don't have errors coming up in the future, I need the data downloaded. So step 1, download data from Etherpad link. Step 2, what I need is that if you write make version, I need something like that to come out as an output on your terminal. And any kind of error is going to be a bad error that's going to break. I played around last night for hours trying to make sure things aren't going to break. And I now have a version that works. And I also need to be able to run Python from the command line. So this is 3. So if you go Python -- version, I need something that spits out Python 3 point something. And that's all I care about. I don't care what the other numbers after 3 are. I'm going to work on an old version. Huh?
3.1 and 2 were bad.
OK, yeah. Marianne says go for 3.4 and above. But you install stuff. I know what you have, right? You have 3.7 or 3.6. So after you've done those 3 things, a green sticky would be on the top of your computer so I know we can go somewhere and get it right. You don't have green stickies. And if it doesn't work for you, a red sticky so we know to go and problem shoot. Sure.
I have a warning when I type version of Meccanica.
What does it say?
It says that as sig-win.
That is going to be a massive problem that's going to break everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good.
It's a warning that will, once you want to use make to run Python, it's not going to know how to find it because the pointers are not going to be set up. And it's going to say, I can't do anything. Okay. Good that we figured that out right now. Literally any kind of warning is bad. Yeah. Yeah, it's something like a pointer cannot be found or something?
No, it's like find fast the CW.
Yeah, that's like death personified, right? You can't do worse than that. Actually, you can do a lot worse than that, but for the sake of today, that's going to be a bad outcome. So, okay. So, yeah, option 1 of my solution, my install instructions. You tried exactly option 1 and it didn't work? Okay. I'm leaving the microphone for a second so I can swear a bit. It's fine. Okay, so just to make my instructions a little bit clearer on the Etherpad, because it seems like, yeah, I wasn't super clear this morning because I was half asleep. In option, okay, in step 4, where I say copy the contents of make 4.2.1 without whatever, I don't want that folder in there. I want all the subdirectories. So I need you to click into that folder, and there should be like bin, lib, share, and something else. I need those things copied, so we copy the stuff inside those into this Ming W64. It's hard for me to show that. Does someone have, I can plug in a Windows computer.
That's where sometimes the trailing slash makes a difference, but
Yeah.
again, you have to just try it.
It's good to try it. So I'm happy to help people as needed. Okay, did you have do it multiple times. Okay. Now close your shot. Close this and restart it. Super. So just as an FYI, that was like 7 hours of my life last night. So it wasn't like it was a trivial thing that I could just know to do. I literally spent from the minute I got dropped back until after midnight figuring that out to make sure it worked. Okay, does this work for nearly everybody? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So what I want you guys to do then okay, so what I want to do is I want to create a new directory on my desktop. So I'm going to mkdir on my desktop. I'm going to create a new file, or sorry, yeah, a new directory that I'm going to call make lesson. And then I'm going to change into change desktop make lesson. And it's going to be an empty folder. So if I try and list all the files, there's going to be nothing there. Are we good? Okay. Now we need to get the data from what we downloaded in that zip archive to this folder. And I'm going to try and do that programmatically to show you that it works. I hope. Set up. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to unzip, which is a bash command, in my downloads folder. Make lesson.zip, and I want it to go to this new make lesson folder that I've created. So hopefully, if I say I want that unzipped here, and I'm located in my make lesson, it's hopefully going to unzip where I want it to go. File name not matched. So it's not going to do that. Yeah, I think so. So let's have a look. Man unzip. Arguments. There's many. Files. Yeah, D. So let me check that it works. Yep. So what this command says is it says I want to unzip the contents that live inside downloads make lesson.zip. The -d flag then tells me where I want those contents to go. And dot says I want them to go here, which is my new folder I called make lesson. If we then list out the contents of this make lesson directory, okay, it created another directory called make lesson. So I'm going to have make lesson. But we can avoid that. We can move all the files inside the make lesson directory into just make lesson by saying move make lesson star. So everything inside that subdirectory, put it here. Then if I list off all my files, that looks a bit more sensible. How do I then get rid of this extra directory I don't like? rmdir. And then at the end, I got what I needed. I've got a directory on my desktop called make lesson. Inside, I've got 3 Python files and a folder called books, which is going to have data in it. All right. Did that work for everybody? Yes? Okay. So what we're going to do first is try and understand what these three scripts do, just so there's no mystery behind what's going on, right? The idea is we want to test a theory that, for the sake of, is going to be called Zipf's law. And Zipf's law essentially says the first most occurring word in a document occurs twice as much as the second. So what we need to do is we need to use the count words Python script to have a look at a data set. In this books folder, there is a bunch of different books: Abyss, Isles, Last, and Sierra. We need to go into one of these books, count the words, and store the output. And after we store the output, how many of each word is listed, we're going to use this test Zipf's law thing to take the ratio of the first and second word. I'm going to tell you how to do it. This is like not too much mystery going on, I hope. There's a sequence that you need to enter stuff with Python to get this to work. So if we want to count words of one book, we're going to say Python count words.py. And then we have to tell it what the data is. So the data is going to be in the books directory, and it's going to be called isles.dat. If I hit enter and I run that command, I get an error. Aha. That makes sense. So the data set is called books.isles.txt, and I want to save the output into something called isles.dat, so I can open that and look at the output. So I'm going to run the word counter on a book called books.isles.txt and store the result in isles.dat. Something going on inside the Python script is going to make sure that all happens. And then if I list the contents of my make lesson directory, I now have a new file, isles.dat. And if I look at the content of it, whoa, that's way too many things. Let's do it by looking at the beginning. Head -5 isles.dat. I see that the word the was the most occurring word in the text, and it occurred 6.74% of the time. Of was the second most occurring word, and it occurred 4.3% of the time. Right? Yeah.
I guess the previous command, the two before the -1.
So the Python one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Python countwords.py. So use Python to count the words on the book isles.txt. Store the result in isles.dat. Okay, are we good? Yeah, ask questions.
We have to know that the count words code
Yeah.
needs as input.
Exactly. So the count words file needs two inputs. It needs you need to tell it where the data is, and the data needs to be passed across as the first argument, and the second argument is where you want the output to be written. And for me, that's isles.dat.
Okay, so could we have also multiple input files?
You can't have multiple input files. You can only say, I want to run Python using one script, right? So I want to use countwords.py, interpret whatever's in there using the Python interpreter to work on isles.txt and isles.dat. The reason that works is if we have a look inside the file nano countwords.py, it's a little ugly. Don't think of this as the nicest Python code you're ever going to see, because it's definitely not. It's not bad.
So basically, the first
Exactly. So at the bottom of this file, it says the first thing, so the first system argument that is passed over after countwords.py, treat as the input file. The second thing, treat as the output file. So that's why I put it in the order I did. As you write your own code, you'll either remember that order, or you can add an additional Python library where you can make those options clearer to specify, which is my preferred approach, but is harder to do. Okay? So now we've counted the words in one book. The next thing we want to do is test Zipf's law. Zipf's law, again, the first most occurring word happens twice as much as the second. So intuitively, it's going to take the ratio of those two numbers. So to run that, we're going to say Python, use the script called testzipf.py, which is another script that we've written, which does that. It takes the two top lines of your data and divides the frequencies by each other. And we need to tell it what data set we want to use. This script is nice. We can actually pass as many data sets as we want to it. Right? So if we have 5 books that we've got the data for, we can run all 5 at once. I'm just going to run one. So I'm going to test Zipf's law on the data set isles.dat. If I hit enter, it returns to the screen the information we need. The book was Isles. The first most occurring word was 3,800 times. The second most occurring word happened 2,500 times. The ratio is 1.55. We might not want that this script returns output to the screen, right? We might want it to store it somewhere in another file. So the way we're going to do that with this script is we're going to send the output with this greater than sign that we saw yesterday to a file called results.txt. And then if we hit enter, Python's going to execute test script, but it's not going to print the result to my terminal. It's going to store it in results.txt so that if I then have a look at the content of results.txt, it's exactly the same that I had on my screen. So I've taken the output and I've just thrown it into a file. Was that my water?
Yeah. No.
That one was maybe.
Yes. Sorry.
No problem. Okay, so that's what those scripts do, just so there's no mystery behind what we're ever going to do next. The script count words, counts the words. The script test Zipf is going to test Zipf law on whatever data you throw at it, and then send the result to screen, or we can redirect that output to a file. Now, in the books directory, we have 4 books there, right? We have the book Abyss, the book Isles, the book Last, the book Sierra, some licenses so we don't get in copyright problems. And what we want to potentially do is count the words in each one of these 4 books and then run Zipf's law, the tests, right? One way to do that would be to go up in our history and find this Python count words.py line, and we could go through and we could manually change this isles.txt to say last.txt and last.dat, and we could keep doing that 4 times, right? That doesn't scale to large projects very well, right? If I had to run this, again, 4.5 million times, I don't want to manually enter things. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to overwrite output by accident. If that took 30 hours, I'm going to be very angry. So we want to come up with a different way to do this. So the first way you could think about doing it is by just writing a simple script that does it, that we just list off the things we want to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Nano to create a script called zip law dot sh, because it's going to be a shell script. And it's going to open nano for us. And then we can just enter in all the commands we needed to be ran, right? So we could say the first thing we want to do is Python count words .py on the data set books aisles.txt, and the output is aisles.dat. We might want to know where our code's up to, so we could say, we could print some output, echo, so print before you run a command, counting words in aisles.dat, sorry, in aisles.txt. People cannot read the yellow? That's going to be annoying because I don't know how to change that by the top of my head. Huh? But then it's not going to echo properly, right? But they can copy it for now. OK. Remind me to change that at some point. Then I'm going to echo. The next thing I'm going to do is count the words in the book called abyss.txt by going Python count words.py books /abyss.txt, save the result as abyss.dat. And then the last thing I could do would be test zip's law. And I would do that by saying Python test zip.py. What data sets do I want to use? I want to use aisles.dat, which is what we did last time. But I also want to use the other book, Abyss. So I'm going to pass that as well to this script. And I'm going to send the output to, what did I call it last time? I don't remember. I'm going to call it results.txt. So this says, potentially there's two things I want to do, three things. First, count the words in aisles.txt. Second, count the words in abyss.txt. Third thing, use those outputs to take the ratio of the first and second most occurring words in each of those books individually. So when you've copied that, can you put a green sticky on your computer so I know where we're at? Because different people type at different paces. I'm going to wrap my echoes back in quotation marks. You guys should too. And then I'm going to save this by going Control-O, Enter, and Control-X. So if I now list off the files inside this make lesson directory, some new things have appeared. There's this _pycache. Yes? There's this folder pycache, which I'm going to completely ignore. And more importantly, there's this new script zipflaw.sh, which I just wrote. Inside this zipflaw.sh, there's a set of instructions that my computer can do, right? And technically, there's 3 steps. Let's see if I did this correctly. I'm going to use bash to run the zipflaw script, and then press enter. And it worked, I think. It printed output, and it printed the 3 lines, which probably suggests it executed each step. We can check by then listing off all the files now in our directory. There's a bis.dat was created, isles.dat was created, and results.txt was created, and the contents of results.txt says for each book, what's the first word, how many times does the first word occur, how many times does the second word occur, and what's the ratio. So that's nice. So that's one way you could think about making your results more reproducible. You just write a shell script that you just literally write off all the commands you want to do. One shortcoming here is suppose that I change, or suppose I want to extend my analysis and now include the results. So I want to count the words in the book last.txt and do the same thing, right? Include that in my results. So take a new book, last.txt. I want to count the words and then include the results inside that test of Zipf's law. What I would need to do is reopen my Zipf's law shell script, create a new line of code that says, well, print out some output so you know where you're up to, count words in last.txt, which is going to be Python count, can't spell today, count words.py, books, last.txt, last.dat is where I want the results stored. And then in Zipf's flaw, I also want to use these results. So now I've extended this script. I've added another command I want executed. I want to count the words in the book last, store the results, and I'm going to augment my results output to also test Zipf's flaw on last.dat. Has everyone got that copied? I'm going to save this output, sorry, it's going to save this script with Control O, then Enter, and then Control X, if you're ready. And then I could rerun my bash script, zipslaw.sh, and hit Enter. And now it does these 4 things. It counts the words in isles, it counts the words in abyss, it counts the words in last, and then it tests Zipf's law. And if I look at the results, this has been appended, right? So I now have the results for the book called Last, where the ratio is 2.2. Can anyone see a potential shortcoming in this approach? Star.dat, but what that would do is it would then put all of those things in try and do that all at once, and that won't work for me, right? So the statement was, how can I make this better? If I went into Zipf's far out, that was not what I wanted to do. So I could potentially put a star.dat there to make this a bit cleaner, but that's fine. All I'm doing is executing one command. The main problem is every time I rerun this shell script, I'm rerunning the word counter on each of these 3 books, right? And nothing's changed. All I'm doing is just adding a new result. I didn't change anything in the IELTS book, but I had to rerun the results. If doing that takes you a day, so if you're doing like some serious coding and that takes a day, just to add an extra line of code, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 days to wait for results, not 1, when really 2 of those days were wasted. And if you're a computing guy, your IT people are going to kill you that you're taking up the high performance time rerunning the same result, especially if you're taking resources from other people. If you're nice to them, they'll let you do it anyway, but you've got to buy them countless amounts of coffee and beer. So it depends how much money you have. So what we want to do instead is to think of a way to work where if I want to do extra steps, I don't necessarily have to rerun things that won't change. But if something will change, I want to make sure the computer knows to go and update it. Right? So I need, in this case, I need the computer to know I have to count the words in the book last.txt, and then after you've done that, you then have to run this test zips law again because a new data set was added. But I don't want to rerun those first two lines. So the solution is going to be to use a program to help us do that. And the program is called Make, which is what we asked you to install. So before we go there, I want to clean up potentially some stuff. No, it's OK. So what I'm going to create is a file, and I'm going to call it Makefile. If you call it Makefile with a capital M, it will make your life easier because you have to type less stuff. You can call it anything you want, but it just means later on you're going to have to type more stuff later. So I'm going to create a new file, nano makefile, no extension. And then press Enter. And the first thing I'm going to want to do is come up with a way of rerunning one of those word counts. Right? Just do it once to see we understand what's going on. First thing I'm going to do is provide some comments just to make future you happier. And we're going to say this makefile tests zips law. If you somewhat like to claim ownership of stuff, you can say that you were the person that decided to do this. Right? And then your own ego dictates how often you write down that you're the contributor to those files. Right? I have a pretty big ego. My name's everywhere. Other people are not. OK? And the first thing we want to do is count words. So I'm going to leave a comment that everything under what I'm saying hashtag count words is doing is counting the words in books. And now I'm going to create what you can think of as a recipe of how to create an output with inputs. So the format's going to be, I need to write down the output I want to create. So I want to create aisles.dat because I want to count the words in the book aisles.txt. Then I need a, what's that called in English? My vocab is completely gone. It's not a semicolon, it's a colon, right? I mix them up all the time, and I couldn't even think of that word right now. I was like, what is it? It's a colon. And this, to create this data set, I need to use the input data aisles.txt. That's the first thing I need to say. There's an output that I want to create, which is going to be on the left-hand side of the colon. And then on the right-hand side is going to be an input. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tab once and you must tab. You cannot use spaces, which is very, very frustrating, especially if you're in a tab versus space war. So if you ever watch Silicon Valley, you'll see this is something on TV that it's what I talk about all the time as a joke. We want, how do we use aisles.txt to create dat? So what's the recipe to create aisles.dat from aisles.txt? We use Python to count words.py. We use the script count words.py on the data books aisles.txt, and we create aisles.dat. Okay, so what have we got here so far? We have output. There's some input that we use to create it, and underneath, with a tab, we write down the recipe. Right? How do I make stuff? So I want a cake. I need eggs plus other stuff, and then I combine those eggs with the other stuff to make, hopefully, a cake. I don't bake that often, so I don't know if that's actually how it works. Okay, if this worked for everybody and we have a copy down, we're going to save it with Control X, Enter, Control O. Whoops, nope. Opposite, Control O, Enter, Control X. And now when we list the files in this directory, we see we have this new guy called makefile. We need to execute this makefile to see what happens. It's a program. We expect stuff to happen. And because we called it makefile, all we have to write so far is make, and then press enter. What happened? It tells us I don't need to do anything. The file, like the dataset aisles.dat already exists. Why does it already exist? Because I created it with that shell script before. So if I instead delete aisles.dat with rm aisles.dat, and I then say make, what make has done is it prints out the command that it executed, and it goes and does it. Then if I list off the files, I see that aisles.dat came back, and it was made by make. Again, if I say, oh, I go away for a day, make whatever results need to be done, make enter, it again says aisles.dat is up to date, i.e., you've already got that output. I don't need to do anything, which is nice, right? I don't need to run that 30-hour code again. You've already done that yesterday. If you have red stickies, can we have people provide some help? Your tab gets converted into spaces. Okay. That looks better. Control X, or Control O, Control X, whatever. Yeah. It works. Yeah. So that, like, so under the hood, Vim knows this tabs versus spaces thing is silly. And it's just like, oh, whatever, I'm going to convert all spaces.
And
You can change that.
Yeah, but I don't need it except for.
Exactly. This is one reason not to like make, is its reliance on tabs. So.
That must be problematic sometimes, no?
I don't know why, but it's not.
When you get someone else's make file, let's say your tab, because
If you don't open it back up, it won't convert anything.
but if you want to contribute changes to it, you'll add lines, but your editor.
Your editor better not convert spaces to tabs.
We have not working make.
We have a not working make
not set
problem.
up make.
A not set up make
Yep.
problem.
Because she cannot install, she didn't make it installed
I
on,
tried it,
on
but
the Git bash.
it doesn't work here.
But on the Anaconda, there's another problem, which probably CIG win. It's update. It's too. It's
Too old?
not updated, yeah. And you have to install the new version. I can take care of it.
If you really, yeah, if you want to go
Yeah.
through it, and
Okay.
that would basically, you'd have to uninstall Git bash, make sure that's up to date, because Git bash under the hood is emulating Cygwin, because it has Cygwin installed under it. You just
we
don't
have
know
to
that.
Uninstall Git bash.
Uninstall Git bash, find the newest
Update.
version, which is 2.19, I think,
2.19. Okay.
and then try again.
Let's do it. Okay.
So I did last night. Many, many times.
Let's try. So close everything.
Okay.
Now we have to do something pretty long. We will eventually succeed.
How are we going?
Problem with make the warning from before.
Oh, yeah, that's from yesterday problem. Yeah. Okay.
We're just doing the procedure.
To reinstall it the other way? Okay.
CIG is, just a second. I have everything written here.
Okay, for those of you that are kind of sitting around waiting for us to debug some stuff, what you could do is you could try and create another rule which does exactly the same thing I just did for IELTS.dat with abyss, right? So you want to create a new rule that creates the abyss.dat data set. And again, when you finish the exercise, the green sticky, and when everyone has green stickies, I'm going to feel confident to go somewhere new.
Okay, open Git bash. And type the same command. You name minus R. And you said that the newest version is the CYG.
Not Cygwin, Git bash.
Huh?
Git bash, the new version of Git bash is
The new
2.1.
version of Git bash. Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
you have to. Okay.
So if you install Git bash, underneath it's going to install what it thinks is the latest version of Cygwin, and do some
The version
1.9 was what I used last night.
Let us check. How do I know the version of Git bash she has installed? Well, whatever. Let us uninstall.
I just don't even uninstall it. Just download the next thing, and download it, install it, it'll override it.
Let's go to Git bash.
Now the task is to make the
No.
same thing.
So do this, make a rule that I created IELTS.dat, make a rule that creates abyss.dat. Yes.
download it again. Let's install it again. And then try to do everything again, but again. Let's see if it works.
All right, so how are we doing? I don't see stacks of green sticky notes. So I'm like 50-50 on whether people have done this.
No, go back, sorry.
Oh.
Okay, one.
Are we done at the front?
Is up to date.
Aha, that's good.
Okay.
It's already done. It's like, I don't know why, but it's already done. Okay, that's that still. Vim with a makefile is going to be potentially tough in that it will auto-change your tabs to spaces which you don't want.
And this is one thing. He did the same thing for the second with the
Yep.
but when he does it, he compiles. It tells
Good.
that
Okay, that's okay. I'll explain why.
why.
I'm going to explain why. But it's good people get there and they realize, that feels weird.
It's normal that.
It's normal that nothing, yeah. Okay. Okay, so I think I've got most of you to a point where you've written a rule, and a lot of you are saying, I do it, but then nothing happens. And I want to understand why. So let me catch up with you guys a little bit. Let me open my makefile with Nano. I'm going to create abyss.dat by going, the input is abyss.txt, and the recipe is python countwords.py books abyss.txt create the output abyss.dat. That looks correct. I'm going to save it with Control O, Enter, Control X. And then if I run make, I get the same thing you do. IELTS is up to date. It doesn't tell me anything about what's going on with Abyss. This is important to know. What make does is by default, if you just write make and nothing else, it's only going to run the first rule that it finds. It's not going to run everything. So that tells you two things. Either you have to tell it which rule you want to run, or we need to make sure that our first rule will expand and run everything we need it to do. Right, so we might need to have a special rule at the top that tells it to make every other rule. So if for a first pass, I'm just going to say I want to run Abyss, make abyss.dat. That's the data set I want to make. It tells me that's up to date as well because I had it from before when I ran my shell script. One thing that's important to know is if you try and say, make the output of some rule, and that output doesn't exist, you don't necessarily get an error message. You get something that looks semi-cryptic. So suppose I thought there was a rule in there that creates the script countwords.py. There isn't. That's an input. It says nothing to be done, not that it's an error. So nothing to be done is make speak for I don't know how to create that output, not it's okay. Nothing to be done, I don't know how to create that, not an error message, which is nice, but also annoying. Okay, so what I've done is I've created a script. It's got two rules to make IELTS.dat and abyss.dat. But so far, I have to tell it which of these outputs I want to create. And as I keep running this exercise, I'm going to want to delete the output and rerun it, right? Just to kind of learn what's going on. So there's two things I need to do. One, I want to create a rule that deletes output, so it wipes out everything I've created, which is nice, so I don't always have to RM stuff. And then two, I want to find a way where I can run everything at once, not have to tell it anything. So first, I'm going to create a way of deleting output, and then I'm going to try and find a way to build everything. So I'm going to go into my makefile with nano. I'm going to go to the bottom of my makefile. I'm going to leave a comment for myself that I'm going to create something that I'm going to call a cleaning rule, which is going to clean output. So delete stuff, basically. I'm going to delete output. Now, what you could try and do is say, I'm going to create a cleaning rule called clean. And what it's going to go in and do is RM, so remove. I'm going to introduce the force flag to you, which says delete it, essentially, no matter what, don't ask me any questions, make sure it never comes back. You can delete your entire operating system this way. I'm going to delete everything that has the file ending .dat. So I'm going to use the wildcard star and then .dat. So that should delete anything that's a .dat file. So conceptually, that should work, right? I've created a rule, and it has a recipe. Let's try and do it and see what happens. Let's save it with Control-O, Enter, Control-X. We think that if we say make clean, things are going to get deleted. Things being everything that ends in a .dat. Sorry, yep, I'll show again the makefile. I created a cleaning rule called clean, and I think things got deleted by using the RM command that we learned yesterday. Okay, so again, save that, and then run make clean. If you list the outputs of, so if you list the files inside your make lesson, all the DATs disappeared, right? There's no more .dats, which is nice, but potentially there's a problem. So if we were to create a directory called clean, why would you do that? Suppose you had your dirty data and your clean data, and for some reason you decide to call the cleaned data, you wanted to put it in a folder called clean. Don't do it, but you could. create a better name for a folder. So I created a directory on my underneath make lesson code clean. Now, if I say make aisles.dat, so I want to construct the aisles data set. If I list the files, I see that it indeed has been created. Now if I run make clean, I'd hope that that thing's going to disappear. Make clean. And you don't get a remove, right? It just says make clean is up to date. And if you list off your files, you see that aisles.dat is still there, and you have a folder called clean. So what make has kind of done is it's gone, well, that's a directory or a file. There's no way to make it, but it seems like it's okay. I don't need to do anything. Which is bad, because then your cleaning rule goes away. You could obviously call your cleaning rule something else, like wipe out everything, and see what happens, which is a totally valid name for a cleaning rule, except you have to write it down. Or you instead update the structure of our make file a little bit. So we go in and go to nano make file, and whoops, we go down, we do something, and we basically give, keep catching my cord on my chair, we create what's going to be called a phony target, which is potentially the best name ever created in a programming language. It's phony, it's not real. And this phony target we have to tell it what it is. We're going to call the output clean a phony target. So essentially what that's saying is I always want to execute clean if I can, and I'm not actually building anything. There is no output clean. Right? So always run this thing called clean. I don't expect it to necessarily build anything, just do it. And find a way to make that happen. So if we go Control O, enter to save it, Control X to exit, and we again go make clean, now I hope I actually delete anything that's a DAT file. And indeed, it's run the command rm-f star.dat, so I think it has. And if I list off all the files in my directory, indeed, all my .dat files disappeared. So this idea that some of your rules are special in that they have special attributes, so the clean rule doesn't produce output, we sometimes need to tell make something like that. We need to give it some information that don't expect it to create an output clean. Now the other problem that I potentially have in my make file so far is when I do run make, it's only creating aisles.dat and not abyss.dat, and I don't want to always have to write two things because I'm lazy and I want to walk away from my computer for like weeks at a time and let it run code, right? I don't want to log into my supercomputer every 3 hours and run the next rule. I just want to run it, walk away, go on a holiday, come back, like I am right now, come back to Zurich on Friday night. I'm going to have new output without entering anything. The way to do that is to also use a phony rule to try and create data. So I'm going to go to my word count section, and I'm going to create another phony target that I'm going to call DATs. Why is it called DATs? Because whatever I do here is going to create the DATs. So it's kind of intuitive by what I wrote. And what I'm going to do under it is say, what is DATS? Why does that get special highlighting? I don't know.
If you have a speed for the column, changes color.
Ah. Because there's no space. Exactly. And then here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to list off the data sets that I want this script to create. I want this script to create IELTS, can't spell, .dat, and abyss .dat.
And here you have a trailing white space, I guess. That's what.
Yes, and down here there's a suggestion there's a trailing white space. Trailing white spaces don't scare me like randomly highlighted words do.
Actually, you can have a setting in Git so that every time you commit, your trailing white
Spaces are going to be removed. Yeah. I think you can also add on certain text editors the same thing.
Yeah.
Nano is the simplest thing ever. It doesn't know to strip stuff. It just says, I trust you.
No, but no, it tells you.
It tells you that it's there, but it's going to let you decide what to do. It's not going to make a decision for you. Okay, so I created a phony rule called DATS. And in this DATS guy, I've just listed the outputs I want to create. So let's save this with Control O, Enter, and Control X. Now, I know last time I ran my make script, IELTS was produced, IELTS.dat. So if I run make this time, I think only abyss is going to be created because IELTS already exists. So if I then hit enter, that's exactly what happens. The IELTS data set already existed because I made it. But the abyss one didn't make smart enough to go, okay, then I'm going to find a way to make it. I'm going to look at your rules inside your make file, find something that the first thing you wrote is abyss.dat, and follow it through. So what it did is it said, I need to try and create IELTS.dat. Here's a recipe to do it, but it already existed, so I don't have to do anything. Abyss.dat didn't exist. Look for a recipe called abyss.dat and execute it. And that's what happened. Okay. Okay, so as an exercise for you guys again, to get some experience, create another rule or amend the rules that I already have to create the output for the book called last.txt so that when I run just make, all 3 books are potentially processed. So I'll write that down. Control X. Make or amend rules to create last.dat from whatever you think you need to create it from. If you find that to be particularly simple, also have a think about how to write a rule to create what we before had as results.txt, which used the data sets that we created and processed them to test Zipf's law by using the data and dividing the 2 most popular words frequencies. Did you solve it?
Yes. So we make it.
We made it.
We make
This is actually pretty cool. This is the first time I've got this many Windows computers all by me.
It's the experience.
It's like, yeah. Last night when I got this to work,
Yeah.
I was texting all my friends in like capitals, I am God, I am Windows God. Like bow down to me. I got make to work.
Yeah, you can call me Gates for now.
Exactly, yeah. Call me Gates too. When you're done with the exercise, a green sticky on the top of your computer so I know, or a red sticky if you're struggling and don't know what to do, and then we can somehow find a way to do it together. What comes next?
Is there any particular order in which they have to write the function?
Yes. Well, it depends what you want to do, right? You could create phony targets everywhere and you'll find a way to make it happen. But, yeah. Okay, something important to think about as you're working through the exercise. Remember what I said before, that if you run make and nothing else, it's only going to compute or use the first rule that it finds to decide what to do. I.e., wherever you put the rule to create results may matter in terms of whether it executes when you just write make, for now. Okay, if we're done, green stickies, and if we're not, red ones or concerned faces. that just a happy wave? Yeah, good. I like happy waves. It's like when the Queen waves. She's just happy. It's insanely. Yeah. It was good this morning, but as soon as it gets above like 4 or 5 degrees, it's like, whoa. I think it was less, I feel less hot than yesterday though, so.
Yesterday, maybe a bit hotter than this morning.
Yeah, this morning was nice. Okay. All right, I'm going to slowly find my way to a result. So what I'm going to do is open my make file with Nano. I'm going to create a rule that generates the last.dat data set. To do that, I need the books, the book last, which lives in the books subdirectory, and it's called last.txt. I'm then going to make a recipe to produce the output. I'm going to count words.py on the data code last.txt to produce last.dat. And then to make sure that gets built, I'm going to update my phony rule to include last.dat. So now this rule called dats is going to try and find a way to make aisles.dat, abyss.dat, and last.dat. If I save that and then run make, because I already had abyss and aisles, it just did what I wanted it to do and made the text, or made the data set from the textbook last. And then if I want to create a summary table called results, I'm going to create results.txt. What are the inputs to results.txt? All the dats. So what did you guys write? Just wrote dats, and that's it? Like that? And then the rule to make it? Okay. Which was? Python test. What was it called? Test zip dot. Oh no, it's not even called that. Zip test, right? No? Test. Cool. And then? Star.dat. Okay. And then output is results.txt. Yeah? We think that works?
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Do you have a take on the file extensions? You've been going from txt to dat.
TXT to dat. Okay. So I want them to be consistent in the kind of format. So for me, today, not normally, anything that's a data set, I ended with .dat, right? Because it's something, and it hints to me it's a data set that you may want to reuse. And I created it. So .txt was just given to me.
Yeah.
I have no preference over what, well, I have very strong preferences, but I'm not going to convey them today, about what format data is sent to me in. So whatever you send me, I'll find a way to work with. When I create stuff, I want it to have very specific file endings so I know what's going on. Everything I create that's a data set today is a .dat. Results.txt, this is not really a data set I'm going to use. These are literally, you could think of that as my final results, which could be a paper.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call it.
Your final output
Yeah.
versus the .dat files are
Yeah.
intermediate output.
Exactly. So results.txt, txt, just because it's a final output, it could be a paper. .dat for anything intermediate that you're building yourself. Like, well, your computer's building for you.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. So I think it's mostly important to like make a conscious decision because it's not like
Exactly.
one thing is right or wrong, but
Yeah.
you know, to have this conversation and to be consistent. most
Exactly.
likely.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever you want to call your like data sets that are intermediate,
But
it doesn't matter.
Sorry, tell me if we cannot go into that.
We can do whatever you'd like to do.
Personally, I don't like .dat too much
Neither
because
do I.
machines don't know if it's a text file or a binary file. It could be either.
Yep,
So
I totally agree. That it doesn't really know what to do with the .dat.
Yeah.
So computers don't really know what to do with the .dat. It's not like a common, I think, file ending. You could actually change that to be anything you liked.
Yeah, of course.
And it's semi-programming language specific.
Yeah.
So if you're going to use Python, you're probably going to try and save your intermediate outputs either as a plain text file like a CSV because you want to make them accessible. If you want to compress the hell out of them because you never want to look inside, I create a bunch of pickle files. So it's just really programming language dependent. This
For
seemed
big
to make
data sets, there's a new thing coming up that's called Feather, the
Yeah.
Feather format based on Apache Arrow, and that's more language agnostic. So you can abstract away the
Yeah.
language dependency like this. If
Exactly.
you care about it. Just,
Yeah, so, yeah, the way your data come and the way you spit them out, you'll form preferences.
yes.
Yeah. So normally if someone sends me a plain text file, I actually send it back to them and say, try a format that every computer can read without me thinking too much. Because the spacing and stuff becomes important on how it separates columns. But I'm a mean person, so that's why I do it. If you haven't learned that, anything except today, I'm not the nicest person ever. Just take that home with you. So I'm going to save this output, and I'm going to exit, and I'm going to run make and see what happens. Now, ooh,
Coffee break.
coffee break is coming in my head. Yep, definitely. I don't think it should create any new data sets because I've created them all already. I hope it creates results.txt. And that's exactly what happened. So then if I go cat results.txt, I see 3 books, first word count, second word count ratio, which is exactly what I had like an hour ago. If I run make again, I hope that nothing happens because everything's up to date. And that's not entirely true. It reran the results rule. And the reason it did that is because of the way we passed the input. So we passed it as that rule dat, which is somewhat troublesome. So what we can do is we can amend our makefile. It depends on anything that ends with .dat. They're the inputs to this rule. So then if I control O, enter control X, and I again run my make script, it says, well, you've already got results.txt from those inputs. We're OK. Marianne looks like she has a question.
Yeah, I want to make sure I interpret it
Sure.
properly. Can you display the content of the makefile again?
Yes, I can redisplay the content of the makefile.
So I have an interpretation, so confirm please if that's correct. Prior to your change, we had DATs as the inputs for the results rule.
Yeah.
And since DATs itself is a rule with the phony attribute, it's kind of forced into running. So calling this triggered the forced execution. Is that how it worked? Like
I would actually have to think about that because I've never thought of it like that. Maybe, yes.
What was your way of saying it?
What was my way of saying why that didn't work?
So like the change we made is
Yeah.
for the results rule.
Sure.
So when we had DATs as input as opposed to star dat,
Yeah.
it ran regardless, even
Yeah.
if the files were up to date.
I'm actually not sure that it knew what DATS was.
It doesn't have a timestamp.
It doesn't have a timestamp. It just has no idea what it's going on with it. There's no way to track what DATS is. I guess I just have to run something and hope, right?
Oh, okay.
And make is very good at running in hope and getting errors.
Okay.
Or getting what you don't want.
The phony attribute does not.
So the phony attribute I don't think does anything. It's that that input had no timestamp for me to figure out when it was updated versus when it wasn't. No problem. So before we go for coffee, 2 things that are short. So far I've said that the dependency for all of my rules is a data set, right? So then if I decided to update one of my codes, so I updated countwords.py, i.e. I could write new features in, right? And I then run make, do you think anything is going to happen? Yes, why, or no, why not?
Will it fail silently?
Will it fail silently? Try. It says it's up to date. Because make doesn't know that count words is is an input to the data counter. If we look at our file, our make file, the only input that we've listed is a data set. So it doesn't interpret countwords.py as an input to the rule. So we need to update our dependencies. Where am I? So results.txt also depends on test zip.py. So if you change the file or the script that generates results, you should regenerate your output because potentially everything's going to change. You may find a bug in your function. You want to rerun stuff. That's going to be the same for each of these book rules. they're going to depend on count words. Dot .py, count words dot .py, count words dot .py. So now all of my rules depend on the script that was used to make them and any input that I threw into that script. So in this case, datasets, which is important. So now if I save that with Control O, enter Control X, and I again, I should even need to touch. Now if I say make, because I touched count words, so I potentially changed the count word script, it went through and it rebuilt all my data sets in case they'd changed. Because those data sets changed, my results table may be updated too, so I better run that at the end.
Wait, it seems now that DATS is defined but is never used in the current version of the make file.
Okay, good point. So what we could do is if we clean, right, and we delete all that data, I may not want to run that final table generation, right? I might just want to generate the data. Then I could write make DATs, and it goes through and it makes them. So because I called that a phony target, I can use that to just generate intermediate parts of my output if I don't want to run the next thing. For example, I clean up my data. I noticed a bug in my data cleaning code. The next step will then take another week. I just want to quickly run my data cleaning step to make sure that it looked the way it should before I go next.
So you expect those kind of nicknames for each rule for like subparts of the make file?
Yeah.
But is this like because it seems to me that it's not the only way to do it. So for example, how would you name the result part? In the syntax, how would you add this into the make file?
How would I add the results?
Can you open the make file, please?
Yes.
So just like we have DATs there, for summary table, we have declare that this part, so assuming we would want to run only this part, so like make result.
Yeah, we could write another rule. We could call it, say, phony final results.
No, but for the existing results rule
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
just to have a way to call it only this.
To call only this.
Yeah. So to type something like make result, so we need to kind of attach a nickname to it.
You could create a nickname to it, or as it sits at the moment, I could just, because it's only one output by itself, I could just say make results.txt. So say what I want to result, and it will just run that.
So it's funny, it seems it's not like a super robust thing, it's a very kind of loose understanding, like make and either input or output.
So normally it's like make either the target that I want to make, or always a target, right? DATS is a target, it's an output.
Oh, yeah, right, okay.
Right, because it resembles stuff.
Okay, so it's
Results is an output.
Okay. Yeah,
Question.
actually it makes sense.
Yeah.
With this version of the main file, if we clean and then we run just make results, it shouldn't work, right? Because it doesn't have that file which applies.
That's very true. So the question was, because if I clean, I only remove the DAT files, am I guaranteed that the results builder will run?
It won't run.
Probably not.
And what if I, instead of star.dat, I put dots? Then it would run, since it calls another function inside the make file?
No, so this bit is like a bash command. It doesn't use, it can't go up and find DATs and know how to use it, as far as I'm aware. So what I would need to do is amend my cleaning rule, which is probably a good idea, and say also remove forcibly.
But I think she's talking
And I think that's a
running
TXT.
Clean first, and
Oh.
then rerunning the whole thing.
Okay. Let's do it. We don't know. You do.
So make clean and then.
Okay. So I'm going to make clean. So I'm going to remove dots.
Do make and in results, right? But it, but you don't have that file. So what
There's no way of making the dat files.
putting star.dat with dots. Does it run?
Where do you want to go?
In results, in the input file, you put dot.
Yeah.
Does it work?
Does it work? If I just make it dots. Let's find out.
Yeah, but then we lose the benefit of what we optimized before. Yeah.
Okay, it worked. Yeah, but yeah, you lose some of the dependencies. This is probably nicer in that it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, just before coffee, one last thing. I want coffee too, but I want to end on something interesting. Is what we've got so far is there's a lot of repetition, right? There's like test zip as a dependency, and then I write test zip.py again. There's an output that I write here, but it's also the name of my rule. So what I can do is I can use some shortcuts, per se, or some variables to make this look a bit cleaner. Yeah. Yeah. It will always execute dots, I think. Yeah, so then if I run this again, it was okay, right? So the first time it rebuilt the data sets because they weren't there and then generated the results. This time it said they already exist, so I can just do this. Oh, I didn't save it. Wait. Hang on a sec. I didn't save stuff. That's why different stuff happened. Control O, enter, Control X. Okay. Okay, so what do I need to change?
Yeah, back to dot dat. The following line, the next line. Dot dat here.
Here?
Yeah. Dot dat. Star dot dat.
Sorry. Okay, save, enter, Control X.
So
Make.
actually, I mean, considering all this we've done, I think that there is a connection to the filming thing, you know, when we had this earlier conversation, because it does kind of trigger.
It does trigger an automatic rebuild. Yeah, which may not necessarily be desirable. So the way I have it, in what I have, is let me find it again. Okay. So in my setup that was working when I was playing around with this last night, I said that to make results.txt, I said it depended on all potential .dat files. Yeah, question? Yeah.
And I have already all the dat files. It just checks if they are there and then executes all the results. Right? So where is you said something about optimization to put star.dat is better than putting that. Why?
So I'm putting star.dat. So basically it depends where it is. And at the moment, I don't want to automatically every time rebuild that results file. Which at the moment, every time I write make, it's rebuilding the results.txt, which isn't necessarily what I want to happen.
No, but this will break again in the sense that if we run make clean and we try to make again, this will not work as we just saw,
Run make
right?
clean. All right, wait, let me conceptually map myself back to where I need to go.
But if you save that, you do make clean and make, it will run into the same problem again. And make. See? So we need. This is what
No
we just
rule
did
to make
previously.
that.
So now we re-edit. Nano.
Yep.
And we line below summary table, we replace the dot dat by dats.
Where? Here?
Above, yeah.
Yeah.
Dats.
Yeah.
Which is, so we replace this with dats.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you did that, you said
And so it
something
means that
about-
it talks. It means that the presence of that dats definitely talks to what is
Yeah,
below
of course.
count words.
It
Exactly.
calls
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
function.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you said something about when we do this, we lose. You said something about optimization or something,
I don't think I did use the word optimization.
or benefit or something like that.
What's the benefit of using?
No, yeah, but I actually didn't agree personally.
Okay, just hang on a second, because I have the final version.
I said it might not be desirable, but I
Because
actually
it's
don't
gonna
agree.
call the
So
thing.
I personally don't agree. So
Oh, okay.
cannot.
So, okay, so what I could do is, okay, this is kind of taking like a bit of a deviation from where we're gonna go, but that's okay.
I think you want to replace that by dats, otherwise the script makes no sense. No, above. Because you want to be able to make clean, to have a clean slate, and then make should work.
So you want like that?
Yes.
Enter.
So it doesn't mean it's the best make file in the world, but at least this
Yeah.
is consistent and makes sense.
So it builds the data first, then it builds the results. Then every time I run make, at the moment, it's going to build the results.
And also, importantly, if you run make clean, then you're able to run make again.
Make clean, make, do everything again. That's true. But
so you
temporary
need that
cost
piece.
at the moment is I'm running that thing all the time, which may not be desirable.
Yes. Yeah, except that the first fix that we tried was breaking something
Yeah,
else.
yeah. So by the end of the day, it's going to go away. I'm going to basically build it up so I don't have to worry about it. It's just to get there, I've got to do extra stuff. So let's have a coffee break, because we got on a bit of a deviation. Now my brain's actually kind of fried in terms of where I need to go next. Let's meet at 3:20. Coffee.
Okay, so that works. So no, so it depends where. At the line. Sorry. It depends where.
Read lines, dot split.
So first, yeah, of course, that needs to be defined somewhere.
Instead of using read
That's for
lines.
sure. So
So
you
you're
need somewhere
building an array, which
look
every
to find
element
its
is like one
definition.
line.
But
Why
for
didn't you use
example, at
the function read lines?
so you
Just a
have
question. It's
the-
probably
Okay, yeah.
something
I actually never wrote, I actually didn't write the code.
Oh,
I
right,
took it from someone else.
Okay, because just
yeah.
curious.
So
and then you
the
have
whole
the
point is not to
tab
care about the
here.
code, right? I don't
Yeah,
care.
of
Then
course.
you
No,
have
no,
the
it's just that
Python
you
Yeah.
use two
command,
functions,
shell
two methods
command,
to do the same
Do the
thing.
same thing.
So it was just for efficiency.
I took it from someone else.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Which is not a great answer. I should actually update it. But
And here you cannot replace this by dats. You cannot because at bash, bash itself will not run.
the previous row. So when we use the start of that.
Oh, this one here. Yeah. So here, well, you can change it in the sense that you get something, but it's
Yeah, because
so
when we
it
put
depends.
when we put that, it recognizes his as a nested row.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so
So
it executes all the single.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what
Whereas
if we put all the single inputs?
that's totally
So-
fine. You can do that. That's actually,
no, I'm not sure.
you can. Yeah, you can just put in.
No, but
Shouldn't it work
do it,
here?
and I think it will not work. So yes.
For
Can
the
we
same
unplug
reason
temporarily? for these guys?
Yeah. You can unplug.
No, we're not
Yeah.
like
For
actually
the
working.
same reason that he doesn't recognize all the
So
single
if
debts
you
as a root.
no, yeah, it will not. So run make clean. I mean,
Control X.
whatever we can do it afterwards. No.
Okay.
So like
We
here,
just for once.
if you replace the dats by the individual dat files,
Okay.
So let's
you
do
will
once.
have the
One, yeah.
same problem again.
Dot that, abyss dot. I actually think this is okay. Right, that's it.
Save.
Yes.
Yeah. Save and quit. Now make clean. And now make.
Oh.
Okay.
That's actually what. That's actually how my code looks.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the plain, in a way, it's the purest version.
It's the purest way of doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
But the thing that's ugly about this, which I'm going to get rid of eventually, is that you always have to update that, right?
Yeah, of course.
So what I'm going to do later
With
on.
the start, it doesn't work.
So what I'm going to do later on is find a way to go into my books folder.
Well, because they're explicitly there.
They're explicitly
okay.
there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find a way to automatically
So another workaround is to
use
use
a function.
nested rule. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to create a function that stores those.
And in that sense,
And
it's
those only.
not necessarily desirable indeed.
But that's
Because maybe you don't want the side effects.
does it happen
of
because
it, yeah.
this will also become a file, and that only remains
Yeah,
DATS
a
has no-
symlink
yeah.
or something like that. in
So
spirit,
DATS has
yeah.
like no time information about it. It's just something.
Yeah.
And so Mate, what actually
You're
does
safer with that.
is it looks at the timestamp, you create something. So if there's no timestamp for DATS, it goes, oh, I have to keep running it because it could be right
Yeah,
now.
because for me it's also difficult to understand that when you declare a file, then you use the file name for create itself.
Yeah, we're going to get rid of some of this stuff.
Because if you declare that, then the that will create with this rule. I don't know
Okay.
if
Yeah. I think I know what you mean.
The way if I think that, because that doesn't exist when you declare here.
What doesn't exist?
That. All the dats doesn't.
All the DATS don't exist.
Imagine that you clear.
You clean it out.
You clean it out. Then you declare something that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
And you
but
say,
then, okay.
create itself by using this rule.
Exactly.
So you use
That's the idea. It's
the
going
name
to say
itself to create a rule to create the file.
Yeah.
I know, but maybe it can
I know what you mean.
messy.
A little bit messy.
The reason,
Yeah. But essentially, if that doesn't exist, it's going to look at the other rules it knows and say, how do I make that? I could either look at that, which doesn't, it's not informative.
But if you start to to zip all the
Yeah, and I guess that using like variables or pointers or whatever in spirit that is.
I was thinking about
it's either
like a pointer.
it can be an advantage, but it can have side effects that are not desirable, as you said.
Have no desirable side
maybe
effects.
It's really
as
No,
a
it's
variable
both-
overwriting.
yeah, so it's
something
either
that can be in conflict with with names, just
Yeah.
like clean. So you have to in some sense to
it
phone
can have an advantage or a disadvantage depending on what you want to do, and
But if you use just that as a nested rules, it will work because that doesn't do anything instead of
Okay,
Execute other
I think I get what you
DATS.
mean. Yeah. But I want to
That's
make
for
it
the DATS.
callable, right? So this was just
but
literally
the
to make
funny
things
thing
callable.
is that so we've cleared that DATS is not a file indeed, so it doesn't have a timestamp, but star.dat also is not really a file with a
It's not a
timestamp.
file, but all
and then-
four of them are files.
Will
all
become-
four of them.
Yeah,
are
except that
timestamps.
we've
eventually
seen
will
that
become a file.
yeah, but it's not in the updating sense that we're talking about. In the kind of reactive sense that we're talking about, we saw that star.dat does not replace the spelling out of all the file names. So clearly, it does not exactly.
It doesn't exactly do what we wanted to do.
You know, well, it's like it represents them in a certain context, but in this one, not exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
To get to another level.
We're gonna
I need
find
a coffee.
We're gonna find a way around it.
Yeah. But they're following. They're really trying.
Yeah, they're trying to follow
Very
what's
nice.
going on,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
good. And the pace seems okay enough. So
The what?
the pace seems okay.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
A little bit slower than I want it to be, but it just means we don't
but
do
they're
super
getting
fancy
something
stuff.
out of it. At
Exactly.
least. Yeah. So I think it's great.
Yeah, and I'd rather have something you understand than the fanciest thing you could possibly do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
that? Yes. Okay, I'm done that. So we need to go back one. Do that.
so devi da lui perché lui al massimo
Io non lo so, cioè, poi a parte che non so se in quest'aula, magari sì.
Sai, nelle nostre linee cambia la fine, cambia l'aria, cambia la fine. Come cambia all'inizio. Quindi non puoi cercare di
sempre di più.
Okie dokie. So what we've done so far is kind of nice. And really all I'm going to do for the rest of today is find ways to make this look A, cleaner by reducing the repetition, the amount of times I write certain things down. So it feels weird that I should have to specify aisles.dat as the target and also write that that's part of the recipe. There must be a way to get around that. These three rules are all doing exactly the same thing. There must be a way to simplify that. And having to specify lists of stuff, it'd be nice if I could find a way of my computer going into a folder and finding all the names for me, not me writing down 4 million file names. So these are the kind of things I'm going to do for the rest of today. Just reduce the amount of, in essence, words and add other stuff. So one thing I did while you guys were having a break is I played around with this problem we had before where sometimes it was building and sometimes it wasn't. And I've kind of settled on what I had last night as a solution, where for results.txt, at least for now, I'm going to get rid of this later, at this intermediate point in my life, I want to list out all of those data sets. And then also, when I do a clean, I felt conceptually uncomfortable, which may just be me and not anybody else, that my cleaning rule was removing intermediate data sets, but it left final output. Part of me thinks that if I know that the intermediate output is wrong, or I don't want it anymore, I probably don't want the thing that comes next, right? If the data is wrong, why do I care what the final results look like? Delete that as well and start from scratch. So what I did is I did two things. I amended my cleaning rule and added an extra command that removed the results.txt file. So if I remove the intermediate data, I also remove the final results table.
Maybe you can pronounce the word pipeline. The idea that the final result is downstream.
So the final result, results.txt, is the final part of some process. And if I remove something in the middle of this process or pipeline, it feels weird to keep the end result. So I've deleted both things. If I delete intermediate data, I delete the final result that came out of it, because it's probably not what I want. And I added some extra words, or actually outputs, to this results.txt. I actually filled out in full what these data sets were. So from now on, my goal is how can I clean up everything I've got here to look nicer. Some people, including myself sometimes, will think that nicer also means so complicated I can't possibly understand the file. So a whole bunch of these words are going to get replaced by $ symbols and some other stuff. And that starts to get a little confusing, and I forget what they are. So there's going to be a trade-off. I'm going to go like total in and replace everything I possibly can. In the real world, sometimes I leave some of that stuff out so that I understand my code. Or even if I don't understand it, my advisor or whoever I work with can understand it. Because even if I understand it and they don't, that's kind of a loss in a way, right? If your advisor ever reads your code. Yeah. So one of my advisors never reads anything I code. The other one reads everything. So then I need to make it understandable to at least one of them. I think there's something in between.
Yeah.
But I haven't found that guy yet. OK. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my DATS rule. And what I'm going to do is decide that it feels weird to write the output as the target of my rule. I create abyss.dat. Why do I have to like write it again? Why can't I just fill in that value down here using some kind of variable name? And I can. Yep.
I have a question. Can we copy this file with another name?
To keep it for later?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there are not conflicts?
No, there won't be conflicts either. Okay. So all like these files are on like the Software Carpentry website, so you can go find them. But if you want a version for yourself, yeah, you can copy it to some like, extra file called intermediate makefile. Nothing's going to go wrong. OK, so it feels weird to me that I have to write the file I want to create here, and I need to include it in my recipe. There is a way to replace doing that. What I'm going to do is in my recipe, I'm going to replace in abyss.dat, I'm going to replace the recipe with $@ What? This is why it gets unreadable pretty fast, right? Because I'm going to just keep doing this kind of stuff, and it's just going to look, it's going to be tough, right? So this $@ goes in, and it finds the name of the output you want to create and replaces it on the command line or on the shell command for you. So to see that in action, if we save that with Control-O, Enter Control-X, and then we say make clean, so delete everything, and then we run make, we hope that exactly the same thing as last time happened, that for Abyss, Python prints, takes the abyss.dataset and not an @ sign as a dataset. It's exactly what happens when I run make next time. Make went in, and it took that $@ inside the make file and kind of replaced it with the name of the target, which is nice.
Maybe that's a detail, but
yeah.
It seems like
go for it.
It goes from the bottom of the file and up. Is that, or is it not ordered, or?
What order is it executing stuff is your question, right? That's actually a good question. It may be going that way. Yeah. Initially, I thought it was going to go that way. Pardon?
Want to specify results?
Abyss.dat. OK, yeah, maybe it's looking there, and it's going, I need to do that, then that, then that.
Switch.
We can switch it around and see what happens. It's always fun to do that kind of stuff. Let's go aisles.dat, last.dat. Let's put Abyss in the middle so we can't claim it's going from anything in the sides, right? If a computer program pulls from the middle without me telling it to, that's going to be the weirdest thing ever, and I'm going to get very scared. So let's put it there and save it and exit. Let's clean up everything and run make again. And we're interested in if the order of these three things changed. Yes, it does. So that's the order that these things are being executed. So it goes aisles, abyss, last, depend on the order that I passed them to what turned out to be for me the final thing I did. So it said, okay, I need to build results.txt. Does IELTS exist? If not, make it. If I have a recipe to make it. Does Abyss exist? No, find out a way to make it if I can. Last. There was no recipe to make test zip for just, I'm going to assume that you know what's like, the user has some kind of brain power going on. It's completely unlikely. Thank you. Okay. I don't know what I'm being thanked for. I wasn't being mean to you or anything. For swapping the order and understanding. Okay. So that was nice. The next thing I can potentially do is replace.
So can you do this like $at everywhere?
Yes. I'm going to hold off on that and make everyone else do that for me so they have a practice doing it often. The other thing I can possibly do is there's a special make command to get the first dependency that you write down. So it only takes the first one with this command. So I can potentially replace books/abyss.txt. You know, because I wrote it here, I might want to get rid of it down here in the actual rule. So I'm going to do that. Whoops, went too far. And you start to see why it gets confusing, because I'm going to replace it with $, less than or equal to. That is a make command for saying, go in, find the first dependency, so in this case, books/abyss.txt, and insert it there, please. So it starts to look a little shaky in terms of understanding. Right? If you come back to that 2 years later and you haven't used make for 2 years because you evolved to another platform, that's really confusing. That was last weekend for me. What do these symbols actually mean? Okay, so I could potentially save that. Exit. Make clean. So delete everything. And if I build my make file again, it's done exactly what I wanted when I built Abyss. It replaced that $ less than or equal to sign with books/abyss.txt when I needed to execute things. So as an exercise for you guys, why don't you go through the rest of that script?
Why do you write like an American?
What's American?
Through.
I did spend time over there in my life.
It shows.
It shows, yeah. And I'm so eager to go back, right? I'm running back there as soon as I can. So go through the rest of the make file and update with the, what should I call those? Names. Update with and where appropriate. Variables. Wildcards is probably better, yeah. When you've done that, put up a green sticky on your computer so I know that you're done, and we can keep powering forward. Okay. How are we going with our replacement of words with symbols? Part of me thinks of this, actually, I'm thinking out loud, so don't take anything I say at the moment seriously. Is I think of this step kind of like graduating from primary school math to middle school math, where you went from like 2 + 2 = 4 to things like x + y = z, right? There's that conceptual mapping that there were words or numbers that I understood to symbols that I'm not sure that I did. And at least when I was a math student, I wasn't very good at the beginning. I was a late bloomer, and potentially still am, waiting for that math genius to appear in my head. I can code stuff, I just can't do it mathematically. I'm not a physicist, so that's okay. I can differentiate though. You know, I feel comfortable. Yeah, I know. I passed high school. Yeah. Okay, so I think people are roughly done with that. It wasn't the deepest challenge ever. We're going to open our Makefile. And in these rules here, so last.dat, you would have gone and replaced this with $sign less than. This became $at. Same thing for aisles.dat, but I'm feeling a little lazy. What did you do for the summary table? What did you replace? You replaced results with $at. Yeah? Did you do anything with star.dat? No. Because the first one, the first dependency is just aisles.dat. So if I replaced it down here, I then would have had to write these extra things in. And I wasn't clear that was going to be a meaningful thing to do. Okay, so first bits of words being replaced with symbols that are confusing to remember in the future. The next step, I think, is more intuitive. Because when I look at the bottom part of my Makefile with these word counters, I see that I basically execute the same command 3 times and just change the data set name. So it'd be nice if I could just call that one, like make one rule. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Sure. I like questions.
Putting the position of test PI in front of the dependence, we could simplify the...
Definitely. We could do that. We could move this guy. We could put it here. And then replace this with $sign less than. And that would be perfectly fine. So that simplifies too. One thing I potentially don't like there, but this is, again, going to become personal preference, is that in this command, I don't specify what Python script I'm executing, whereas here I have. Personal preference only.
You mean in the name of consistency?
In the name of being somewhat consistent and the way I want to run things. So the next thing I want to do is find a way to condense these 3 rules into one. And the way I'm going to do that, I need to skip ahead a little. Sorry, with you in 2 seconds. Exactly. So what I can do is I can shrink these 3 rules down to 1 by saying, for example, last.dat. Inside books, this subdirectory, there's a bunch of files called something.txt. And I can just take what that something is and make it a temporary variable, right? And I can just alter that variable. It can be first, it can be last, then it can be abyss, and then it can be aisles. And the way to do that here is to use a percentage sign. So this is then going to say, fill up this part with anything you find inside the books directory that ends with .txt, one at a time. So make it aisles.txt, execute something. Then make it abyss.txt, and execute something. But if that variable is changing, the output is 2, because I want the output to have the same name as the book. I want aisles.txt to produce something called aisles.dat. And that's what this is going to do. I'm going to go into books. I'm going to find anything that ends in .txt. In the back of my head, create a list of what they are, then go over them one by one, and then execute this rule as needed. If that's the case, technically I don't need these additional rules for abyss and aisles. So things start to get smaller. Or do they?
So that there's an implicit loop going on?
And there's some kind of loop going on, right? Where in make, it's going to look for everything here that ends in .txt, and then loop over those variables. For all things that end with .txt, do something. And Python count words.py on the first input, blah, blah, is the do. So let's save that. Sure. Probably not, right? Because this is looping over something. And then I don't necessarily want that to be updated in place. Right? Because the first time, right, this is going to be aisles.txt creates aisles.dat. Then if I put something up here, all that's going to be is aisles.dat. Then it's going to go to the next value, abyss.dat, 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 throw away aisles, write abyss.dat. That would be conceptually a weird thing to do. So here I need to keep, for now, the list of all the books I want to analyze. I'm going to get rid of that later. For now I'm saying, for all the books I want to analyze, this rule is the word counter. So I saved that, and then I exit. I'll clean everything up. So we make clean, throw everything away. Now, so far, whenever I've wanted to do something, I've just said make, and it's done it, right? One thing you can do is before running make, you can do what's called a dry run to kind of see what make wants to do by printing out the commands it's going to run. This is, again, nice because you don't want to get halfway through a command that takes forever to find out you just didn't make sense. It's not going to check that it actually can work. It's not going to check that your Python script is correct. It's just going to say, is this make file consistent? Do I know what to do? Assuming you didn't make any errors in your code. To do that, it's make -n or make -- dry run. I think. I think it's that. Exactly. And then it prints out the commands it wants to execute. It said, well, I want to count the words in aisles, save the result. Count the words in abyss, save the result. Count the words in last, save the result. Use all of those things to test Zipf's law on a book-by-book level. Does that make sense? Do we think that's a good idea? I think so. If for no other reason than when I look at my make file, one line or one recipe contains less typos than 4 recipes of exactly the same thing. It's easier not, I'm going to make less mistakes. And I'm going to make sure that I'm consistently treating each data set the same. Right? There's no, for example, extra stuff added to one rule and not the other. I'm taking every data set and doing exactly the same thing to it, which is nice too. Particularly if, for example, this script had other options, like throw away half the data. You don't want to throw away half the data for some books and not others. If you have some kind of weird sampling scheme going on, that would be puzzling. Okay, things are getting nicer. What comes next? Exercise. Nope. So the next thing I'm going to do, which is relatively conceptual, is I might not like the idea that in my rule, I'm writing down explicitly what I'm doing, right? Execute Python on count words. What I could do potentially instead is create some variables that take the value like Python and take the value count words and potentially combine them or just treat them separately. That way, if, for example, I wrote a Python script that does count words, and I wrote a JavaScript that counts words, it might be easier to go through and replace if I want to switch my language later on. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create, up the top, because it's conceptually easier to find, some variables. If I can spell things correctly, variables. And I'm going to start with saying that, for example, the file that counts words, I'm going to call it count_src. I'm going to put all of my variables as capitals, completely capitalized. So it's clear to me when I read my script later that these are variable declarations that come from somewhere. At the moment, they're going to be inside my make file. I may decide to put them in a different file later on. So this is going to be count words, .py. It's not mandatory at all. It's just It's just like some kind of again, trying to distinguish. It's good practice to kind of understand that some things are like variables. You understand if you see a whole capitalized thing, you've probably declared it somewhere else. You can go searching for it. Okay, so I could create this variable count source. I could go to my count words.py rule. And then I would want to do something like replace the count words.py script with this variable. And then for the command line to know that that's a variable you've defined before, you're going to wrap it in parentheses. And kind of following the theme that we've seen so far, where we like to add dollar signs everywhere, you're going to preface your parenthesis with a dollar sign. So this says, I want to run Python on some variable called count source, which is located somewhere inside, at the moment, this file. And I'll put it at the top to make it easy to find. To then see that that works, we can save it. We can exit.
But can you use the dollar count also in the dependencies?
Absolutely. That's nice. I forgot about that. This is nice, right?
I got lost. So
Yeah.
we have to do dollar sign and then in brackets because
So count source is a variable, and I need to basically fill out that variable. I need to replace count source with count words.
it's like how to say
How to escape the variable name and give it and assign it, like use what it's assigned as, in a way. So wherever you see dollar sign parentheses count source, replace it with countwords.py. Question?
Yeah, again, same question about the convention with the uppercase. So I'm used to them as to use constants for environment variables in Unix.
Yeah.
What is the heritage?
What is the heritage?
Yeah.
The heritage is I woke up today and decided that. Like, I don't know if this is generally widely done.
Okay, yeah.
It's just whenever I run some kind of make file,
Yeah.
anything I declare at the beginning, I capitalize. So in a way, I just need to find a way to know that this is something I've created as a variable, and I can try and find it later. If you want, you could, if you don't do uppercase and you don't do lowercase, what's left? Like some mix of lower and upper. I'm not a huge fan. So, yeah. So that's how my file looks at the moment. I'm going to exit. Oh, no, I don't know what I've done. Oh, OK. I didn't save that change. So countwords.py, I've replaced everywhere with $. What's happened here? Count src. Save it and exit. I'm going to clean everything, so delete all my output. If I run this makefile again, I expect to be able to do everything I've done before, which is exactly what happened. Count words got replaced. So it was count underscore src. And then in make, it replaced count underscore src with countwords.py, which is potentially nice, right? Make clean, make file. If for no other reason that my rules start to look shorter, but they also start, when things start to look shorter, they start to look slightly more confusing. Another thing some people will do, I'm not convinced that I'm a huge fan of this as something to do, is I can create another variable called count execute, where I'm going to combine the source code with the programming language, or like what I'm going to run. So I could write something like Python $count src. And then I could update what I have down here to be $count execute. Personally, not my favorite thing to do, but I get that if I had countwords.py and the equivalent countwords JavaScript, then if I wanted to change to a new language, all I'd have to do is potentially update that file ending and replace that with Java or whatever I need to invoke, instead of having to go through every rule and replace the word Python with Java.
Would it in principle be a good idea to also make a variable for the directory books?
Potentially, yes.
So this
Yeah.
becomes like a completely general.
Yeah, it becomes like a total black box. How much generalization do I need?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say probably yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I'm going to save this, it works. As an exercise, go through and try and do the same thing for the results table. So replace this testzip.py and Python testzip.py with something like, what did I call it before? Because I definitely don't like test source. That will make me feel very uncomfortable. Zip. So Control X. Replace test zip.py with something that looks like zip src, and also Python test zip.py, make it zip underscore exe. And again, when you're done, a green sticky on your computer, so I know you're done. We're really going going to go. Yeah, exactly. We're really doing stuff. But it's okay, we're almost done too, so
Good timing.
timing will be okay. Do I kind of want to do that here? Okay, so I'm starting to see green stickies, which makes me happy. I'm getting a red sticky note at the front. How are we doing at the back? Good? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. So then what I think you would have done would be to go in and create two new variables, call them zip source with src, which is zip, no, other way around, test zip dot py zip exe equals Python $ zip src, and then go down here into your rule, replace test zip with $ parentheses zip src and Python $ greater than or equal to with $ zip exe. Save it. And then if you exit, clean your directory and try and rerun everything, everything ran. So obviously the variables were being replaced where we wanted them to be replaced. So the next thing we can do, right? This is like, think of the rest of the day as just the next thing we could do, the next thing we could do. You know, what other cool stuff can I do? Is potentially, if I adopt this strategy, in a large project, there's potentially many of these variables that I'm defining. And I may not want to have the variables in the same file as the rules. I may want to have them separate and then import them into the make file. Might make version control look a bit more sensible if I update the variables. It's nice to have a separate place where that's going on from your rules. So to do that, I'm going to exit my make file. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it config.mk. Config because it's a configuration file, .mk because it relates to my make setup. Inside my config.mk, I'm literally just going to have those 4 lines. I'm going to have variables, and they're going to be count src equals count words dot py. Count underscore exe equals Python $ count underscore src. Zip src equals, I like my equal signs to be lined up, personal preference, zip test dot py. Was it test zip? I've forgotten. Test zip. Like, that doesn't look right. Test zip dot py. Zip execute is Python $ zip exe. src, exactly. Otherwise, I'm defining something by some version of itself, which doesn't make any sense. Okay, so I create a config.mk file where I'm trying to separate out some variable assignments from my rules just to kind of make things cleaner for me to understand what's going on. I'm going to save this with Control-O, enter Control-X. And then when I reopen my make file, I'm going to replace this variable assignment with a way of importing that configuration file. So I'm going to delete all my variables inside my make file. Instead, I'm going to import a config, which I think was with include. Include config.mk. What that does is it then loads all the variables stored in my config.mk file and makes them available to this make file. So then if I save this with Control-O, enter, I exit with Control-X, I clean, so I delete everything. Now if I run make again, I hope that all those variables were assigned and everything goes through. And that's exactly what happened. So what have we done there? I took my make file that had a whole bunch of variable assignments. I took out those variable assignments into a config file so that things are separated. Rules are in one place. Variables are in another. So I think probably the last thing for the day is one more thing that I'm a little bit unhappy with in this file. Does anyone have any idea what's left that I could be unhappy about? And by unhappy, I mean moderately unhappy.
Files not explicitly indicated inside the 27.
Yeah. Always having to write out these DAT files. Yeah. So what I want to come up with a way of doing is not having to write down always this list of DAT files, but coming up with some kind of function and then some variable assignment that these book names come out of pre-existing files, and then I just need to replace .txt with .dat. So that's some kind of strategy. So to do that, I need to do two things. I need to find all the txt files that I potentially want to work on. And then I need to do some kind of substitution to replace .txt with .dat. So the first step is potentially easier. I'm going to create a variable called txt files. And I probably want to put this in my config.mk. But because I don't want to have going back and forth between two scripts right now, I'm just going to do it all in one place and then send it across later. What I need to do is I need to do some kind of wildcard operation, wildcard, that goes into books and expands that star to be everything. So I need it to take the value last, the value abyss, the value aisles. Because I need this to be something I can call upon later, I'm going to wrap it in a $. This says basically execute a wildcard function on the books file, store it in some kind of list. What does wildcard mean? Wildcard means look for where there's that star and then expand it. It's make language. Yeah, this is a make word as far as I'm aware. I don't think that exists in Bash.
Yeah,
no. Yeah. Exactly. That's a make word which says go find the star and expand it and create a list. To see that that's doing what we think it's doing, what I will do is underneath my cleaning rule, I'm going to create another rule that I'm going to call variables, that whenever I say make variables, it's just going to print out the list of these things so I can check intuitively that it's done what I need to do. The way I do that is by saying @echo. Note there's an @ in this bash command. It's make specific. I want to echo the word text files and then list off all the possible text files in my books directory. So $, actually not, yeah, actually that. txt files. So now, if I go out of my nano and I go to my terminal and I write make variables, I hope it's going to print out text files followed by a list of all the books in that folder that I'm potentially interested in working on. So let's see if that worked. Make sure I did everything the way I think I did. Yes. Yes. Control O, enter, Control X. Make variables. Nothing to be done for variables. What have I done wrong? Okay. Why didn't that work? There's no rule called variables. If you look at my clean rule, there's phony clean, and then I declared a clean rule. Here I said phony variables, and I never told anything about what it is. So I have a rule called variables, and then I declare it to be a phony target. So if I run it, it always executes this line from the, on the shell. So let's try that. Control O, enter, Control X. That's nice. You have a question? Yeah, fire away.
Why do we need to put an F before echo?
It's a good question. So first, let me just note that it did what I thought it would do. I've got last.txt, aisles.txt, and abyss.txt. There was an extra book I haven't talked about today to make things faster called Sierra.txt that is also found. So I found all txt files. The question was, why do I need an @echo? Whatever. So if you look at that line of code, it looks different than every other echo that I've written down so far. So if you remember what I did in some bash file.sh that I've forgotten what I called it, my echo had parentheses around it to print out text. What this is doing is it's printing out everything from here, from text files onwards, and it's going to expand that variable for me with everything that it's stored in that thing called txt files at the top. So it's taking this list and then kind of expanding it out and printing it down for me. A good question is whether that's a make-specific line of code, to which my answer is probably yes. I think that is makes echo, not one from bash. Let me just go down. OK. Aha. What is @echo doing? I actually wrote down because I was curious. What it's doing is when you normally just have echo, it prints out the command, right? So if you just write echo something, so suppose you wrote echo in quotation marks, my name is Python. Then when you wrote that in a command line, it prints out exactly echo my name is Python. This prints out the output of this rather than the function itself. That's kind of weird.
But with regular echo, you can also have a as variable, and then you get the value of the. But
so I think
maybe because this guy is
that guy.
Specific.
Yeah, I think because this is somewhat make specific, I need this to go. Yeah. OK. So what I've done with this is when I write make variables, I have this list of text files. That's not really what I want, right? Because if you look at my make file, I need it to be the name of the book .dat without the book's subdirectory. So I need to replace the .txt's with .dats. And I need to get rid of the books / part of that output. There is a way to do that.
Oh my God, I would so do it in Python. I would not worry about this.
That takes the fun out of it. OK. So what it's going to do is I'm going to create this thing called dat files. What I want to do is do what make calls a pattern substitution. So it's going to replace certain patterns with others. Pardon?
Substitution inside the.
So yeah, it's going to be substitution inside. So we're going to go and take everything.
Someone talked about regular expressions, and so that's the same idea, but actually regular expressions, they usually change a bit from one language to another, so you always have to learn the details.
Exactly. So what I'm going to do is I had that list that was books, my book name, .txt. With this % sign, I'm going to pull out just the name of the book. So just Last, just Isles, just Abyss, or Sierra. Then what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to create something called thatthing.dat. dat. So books slash aisles.txt becomes aisles.dat. Where do I figure out where to get the values of this percentage sign from? This list of text files that I just pulled out of a folder. So it's going to come from anything that you located inside the text files. Go in, find the bit of text between the books directory and the .txt, take it, create it.dat for some list of objects that I found before. And then wrap that whole thing in parentheses and a $sign so that it executes and stores it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Would it be possible to substitute aisles.dat, abyss.dat, and so on with just star.dat instead of doing this?
Instead of doing this? Yes.
I mean,
It's
this is
not
more general,
that
I get
easy.
it,
Yeah.
because first of all, you define what txt file is, and you define a list.
Yeah.
In this case, where we analyze all the dot files, it would be easier.
Yeah.
Sometimes, right?
So one thing I could have done, which could have been nice, is I didn't necessarily have to do this as a wildcard. If for some reason I could have just written a list of stuff there and just wanted to expand that list. That list I might not want to have come up with a program or a little command to find it. This is more general that way. It doesn't have to be the output of that wildcard. It could be any list that I wrote down.
Sure.
So that's why I like this a little bit more. I say find in text. I have a list of stuff in text files. It has the format books/something.txt. Take the something. Everywhere you see that something, create something.dat.
Yeah.
A lot of the word something string together there. But it's evolved from stuff. So I've evolved over the days. What we might want to do now is to check that that works as follows, or as desired. In my phony rule called variables, I might want to print out the variables that I think, or the names that I think I've created. So I could echo dat files and print out everything that I've called a dat file.
For consistency, can you just add a comment on top of phony variables so that we know?
Totally do that. It's not a cleaning rule, right? Yeah. What do you want to write?
Oh yeah, it's a bit of a dry run kind of.
List of variables automatically created. It's a really long name, but it's not great comment ever, but I had 10 seconds to. But visually it now distinguishes cleaning stuff from some other rule. I agree, that's nice. Okay. We're going to save that with Control O, Enter, Control X. And then we're going to say make variables. And now I see what I've created are the names last.dat, aisles.dat, abyss.dat, and sierra.dat. Question?
Yeah, sorry. In the make file.
Yeah.
We
So in the make file.
in that unsort file, we said that says take everything that has a format books, whatever.
Yeah.
Then when we print it in variables, if it has a format books / why doesn't it print books / keys?
Because what I wanted to do, so here, I wanted to find these things. I wanted to only extract that little part.
Okay, but what if we
The first printout, right? The one for text files you're talking about. The one
The first?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it refers to the top, but scroll down. Yeah, so when we print out those text files here, she would
Sorry, it actually does it. I didn't see it.
Okay. Are we okay?
Yeah.
We're okay. So print out whatever you store. In TXT files, I stored the paths like books something .txt. In DAT files, I wanted to strip out the books part, strip out the text bit, replace the .txt with a .dat. And that's what I've done. Now that I've done that, the last thing I can do is go into my results rule. Now instead of writing all the data sets that I want to work with, I can just use $dat files, and it's going to expand all of them.
You can in principle do it the same with start.dat.
That's fine. I was going to do it. Yeah. Spoiler alert. Yeah, exactly. This phony rule I can also replace with the data files I want to run with. And finally, when I remove stuff, I could remove all the DAT files. So anywhere there's been anything related to a DAT file, I've replaced it when I need the list of them together.
And down there also TXT files with the variables, or no?
Where?
Down there.
They're not the same TXT files. The TXT files are the ones under books, and they're the original inputs.
Yeah. Yeah. So that one is the summary table. We don't want to include that anywhere. Here, I need individual books, not a list of books. So I can't include the entire list there, because my code won't make sense of it. It'll plonk in 5 books, not one at a time. So we're OK to go. If we Control O to save, Control X to exit, we make clean to wipe out all this stuff, we see that the expansion worked in the delete command. It deleted all the data sets and expanded it printing out. And then if I write make, everything got replaced as it should, and my code executed. So to summarize what I've done, what I wanted to do in this last 3 hours is come up with some kind of reproducible workflow where I don't have to remember how to combine scripts with data. I write it down once, and it automatically can apply this to various functions or cases if I have many data sets. Also, suppose I deleted by hand aisles.dat. So I don't have that output anymore. So I've lost one of my outputs. I want make to only go in and count the words in that one book and then update the results file as needed. So now if I say make, I want 2 things to happen. Count the words in aisles, create the results table. It's exactly what happened. It didn't count the words in the other books again, which again, if that's a time-consuming process, is good. So that's all I have. It's 4:30, and I think we promised you at 4:30 we'd let you go, at least in the online schedule. So that's what I'm going to do. Thanks for having us. If you have questions, talk to us. I've enjoyed being here. I hope Marianne's enjoyed being here. I'll let her speak for herself. I don't really have anything else too serious to say. One thing I would really appreciate, and Marianne would too, so we get in less trouble than we would otherwise, is on the homepage of the website, there was a thing called a post-workshop survey, which asks you to answer questions about how you felt about what happened over the last 2 days. We would really like if you did it. You could do it right now. It takes about 5 minutes, absolute tops. And then we would like the feedback, the institute, like the carpentries as a whole likes the feedback because it gives us a way to evaluate whether these courses are meaningful on a bigger scale, so we can get more money from the US to keep running these everywhere we go.
We even write papers about
what happens.
So, you know, if you fill out the survey, you become one data point, and that contributes
is nice.
to the overall effort.
So the paper is both nice, and our research grant output gets filled in, which if you do research grants is very important. So I'll put the link even in the Etherpad, so you don't have to worry about clicking and stuff. Copy link address. On line 272, there's the link to the post-workshop survey. It'd be great if you filled that out before you left. In addition to filling that out before you left, we've used these stickies for the last 2 days for good and bad. I would again like you to do it before you leave. What was good about the afternoon, what was bad about the afternoon, so that we can think about it.
Are you sure it takes only 5 minutes to fill out?
Yeah.
More like 10, I think. But
It takes 5 to 10 minutes. I was trying to make them want to do it.
yeah.
I was trying to minimize the time burden. Yeah. I have nothing else to say. Do you have anything else you want to say?
I don't think so. Not off the top of my mind. Thank you for your participation. I think you were a very nice group. I could tell that you were, you know, really trying to follow, really trying to understand, and I hope that you got something out of it. And you know, if ever you missed something, there's the Etherpad, our emails. There's a big community around the carpentries, around the scientific Python community, etc. So yeah, I think it's a very nice wave to be a part of. By which I mean free and open source software, especially dedicated to scientific computing, all the efforts in terms of data sharing or reproducible scientific workflows. So yeah, I really encourage you to join this movement. It gave me my career, and I would say beyond my career, like my life choices and my non-traditional career choices precisely. So I think there are lots of opportunity there. Oh yeah, and the course materials are there online. They're improving and improvable, so feel free to chime in also to fix a typo or make a more substantial addition. It's always welcome.
And they elaborate a lot on stuff we may have raced through at various points. Because we had 3 hours, those lessons are there for as long as you need to stare at them. So they can
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course we try to provide you with a practical hands-on experience right now in the classroom, but the materials are there for your own study.
Did you want to say anything? Yeah. Everyone can.
So if you allow me, I would like just to say a couple of words. The only fundamental words that I have to say are thank you to Marianne and Lachlan for joining us, for giving these lectures, for being so tolerant with respect to the organization of the thing that has been a bit rough, but we made it. And I think and hope that you enjoyed that. I remind you that it's not over, actually. Tomorrow at 11, as you might know / remember, there is a continuation of this event, which is more, it's less a lecture, it's more, it's less a lesson, it's more a lecture in the sense that there will be a few talks about HPC, high performance computing, parallel computing, how this is applied and used in science, to do real science. And next week, I think that most of you will participate to the lectures, the 5 days of lectures that will be given by the Cineca people who will come to talk about parallel computing. And I would also spend a couple of words to thank the helpers that have been here to help you out. So. And don't forget to sign the presence sheet. Thank you very much.
Feel free to go about your day.
One thing that struck me all of a sudden, yeah. When I want to get luxury, of course, we use but
yeah, a little bit. You don't need it.
yeah, exactly. You don't need it. And let's say you want to be conservative, in front of young minds.
Yeah. So another reason sometimes a program will lock a file.
Yeah,
And
but
that will just guarantee it.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Doesn't always happen.
Yeah, no, I agree that for a clean recipe, it makes sense actually.
Yeah.
But in general, let's say, yeah. Good.
Made it. Woo.
I think Raffaele takes care of it.
Quindi siamo sempre al confronto con l'altro.
I haven't done that.
Well, when you were